Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. I'm just seeing if I can get the chat set up here. There we go. And we are ready to roll. If someone who's on Social Galactic would let people know that we are streaming, that would be cool. So, big day. Exciting day, tremendous day, possibly even, depending on how things play out, possibly a glorious day. So, I don't know about you, but I'm sure you've had a tough time tearing yourself away from all the happenings. How many of you, I'm just kind of curious, how many of you are surprised that Vice President Pence cucked? Go ahead, raise your hands. Raise your hands. Let us know what you think. I'm genuinely curious. I don't think anyone. Okay, wait. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so a few people were. The thing that you need to remember about Pence is that he has a long history of cucking. NCAA, various things. I mean, he went against referendums and so forth. So now a lot of people, when that became clear that he was not going to stand by the president, a lot of people were a little prone to blackpilling and so forth, because so much of the court preparations and the court arguments led up to giving him the ability to deal with the electors and so forth, which he did have. But let's before we get into any questions, before we get into super chats and that sort of stuff, thank you, Lightpilled. But just hold on, because I want to go over some things. I want to discuss some things and explain what I mean when I say double envelopment in DC. Because keep in mind, we don't know how this is going to turn out. We don't even know what has actually happened. And I'll make that clear. Appreciation for all of you who were there. I know that there were a number of folks, fans of the Darkstream, supporters of the Darkstream, who were there protesting peacefully. I'm aware that there were some blog readers who were there. What we saw today was, I think, one of the most amazing moments in American history that I've ever seen since the 1980 Miracle on Ice. So let's talk about history now. Okay, just bear with me. This is going to make sense to you, and it's going to help you better understand what I am. What I'm thinking about the possibility of all this sort of thing. So, back in 215 BC, there was the Battle of Cannae, and this was a major battle between the invading Carthaginians, who were under the command of Hannibal, and between the Roman legions, who outnumbered them. And the Roman legions were stronger, as a general rule. Historically, they had the Carthaginian infantry didn't hold up particularly well directly against them. Okay, so Hannibal, probably the most gifted general of his time, possibly one of the most gifted strategists and generals of all time, brought his forces into battle, and this is how they were set up. On the right wing, he had his Spanish and Gaulish cavalry, and they were set up against the Roman cavalry. In the middle, he had on the two wings the African infantry, and he had more Spanish and Gaulish cavalry in the middle. On the right side, he had his Numidian cavalry, which was up against the Italian cavalry, the Roman allies on the Roman left. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is the way that he had his center forward. He had it pushed forward. Okay? So when the battle began, the Spanish and Gaulish cavalry near the river drove forward and managed to take out the Roman cavalry on the Roman right. Then as the battle went on, the Numidian cavalry managed to drive back the Spanish and Gaulish cavalry, or I'm sorry, the Numidian and the Spanish and Gaulish cavalry managed to drive away the Allied cavalry on the Roman left. All right? So, but notice what was happening in the center. The Roman legions, the unmatchable Roman infantry, were pushing forward and driving Hannibal's infantry back. They were certain they were winning. They were the enemy had been pushed, was getting pushed back, and they thought that they were going to break the enemy center, right? Well, if you know much about history, then you know what happened. What happened was the Roman center pushed forward, and then the two wings, as the center collapsed, the two wings came around and fully enveloped the Roman, the entire Roman infantry. Then after the two cavalry wings chased the Roman and Italian cavalry away, they came around and hit the Roman infantry from behind. This is what's called a double envelopment. Normally, especially in the days of the Greek phalanx and stuff, and even in the Roman days, armies were stronger on one side because of, one side you've got your shield, the other side you've got your sword. So typically an envelopment would only come from one side, right? Which would allow the enemy to escape out the other flank. But because Hannibal managed to successfully accomplish a double envelopment, he completely destroyed the Roman infantry. It was by far the biggest defeat in Roman history. Entire legions were destroyed. And as many as 65,000 Romans were killed that day. And this was an incredibly bloody battle. The Romans were surrendered and packed in tightly. A lot of them ended up just basically standing there, unable to move, waiting to die. And so, now the interesting thing is the analogy that the situation, the analogy to today's situation with the presidency. Because practically everybody is convinced that President Trump has lost. He's been defeated on every front. He's been defeated in the legislatures. He's been defeated in the courts. He's been defeated in Congress. He's been betrayed by his vice president, right? So the weakness is apparent. Okay, but have a look at this image and think about it. What we have essentially seen here is that you can compare the cavalry, the Roman cavalry to the legislatures. And you can compare the Italian cavalry to the courts. Trump's legal teams have dealt very effectively with both of those, not in terms of actually getting the other side to join them. Keep in mind we're making a military analogy here. At no point in time were the Romans ever going to join the Carthaginians. Okay, the courts did not come over to Trump's side. The legislatures did not, for the most part, come over to Trump's side, although a few of them actually did in part. But what the legal teams managed to do is they managed to make the case about the election questions and provide and expose a tremendous amount of evidence. So we all know all about the Dominion voting machines. We know all about these other things, right? Okay. So the deep state is the allied forces of the media, Congress, the financial forces, etc. All the people that fear and hate Trump. All of those people that are celebrating the idea that there's only 2 weeks left, there's only 14 days left, and so forth, right? But if you look at what's happening, if you look at what's happened today, Trump's infantry, Trump's center, is the American people. And his offensive forces, the equivalent of the African infantry, are the military intelligence, the NSA, the military, National Guard, etc. Now I'm going to throw some crazy ideas out here for you. This is just a theory. But if you notice, the one thing that had to happen today in order to prevent Biden from being, from the electors as being certified as Biden voters, was that the congressional vote not take place. Now, how many of you believed that January 7th would arrive and neither the House nor the Senate would have voted to certify? Well, they didn't. They haven't. Now, here's what is really the interesting thing is, yeah, they're talking about, oh, the Congress will reconvene this evening. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. But we've also seen reports from CNN saying that Congress is going to be taken to Fort McNair to keep them safe. Where are they reconvening? In the Capitol? Are they being reconvened at Fort McNair? Has Nancy Pelosi come out and said anything? We'll have to see what happens. But are they all locked in their offices? Those of you who are saying, well, this is going to happen, you don't know. You have no idea. None of you said that they weren't going to vote this afternoon. And so the interesting thing, see, I just saw on Twitter that Pelosi said they're going to, yeah, they could also be, they could also, the fact that people are supposedly tweeting, we'll have to wait and see. It's actually John De La Rose says, Pelosi's only statement is a demand for Trump's protesters to leave the Capitol. Okay. And so ban everybody who says they're reconvening now, unless we have actual facts. I'm not interested to hear what people say they think is going to happen. We don't know. Furthermore, it can happen again at any time. What we saw today was, I suspect, intentional. I suspect that the entire point was to delay the vote. Now, I don't know what the president's going to do. I have no idea. Oh, yeah, see, all these people say no indication of reconvene. Yeah, so talking about what they're going to do, you don't know. And even if they do reconvene, you don't know how they're going to vote, because we don't. All we know, and this is just a thought. This is just an idea. But isn't it interesting that somehow they managed to put the entire Congress in the hands of security and law enforcement? Now, perhaps that was just what everybody thinks it is, and it was just the usual protective service, getting them clear of a potential attack, and they've all gone home for the night. Maybe. I don't know. On the other hand, to me, considering you hear about all of the talk about arrests and so forth, well, then you suddenly see all of these politicians being taken to safe and secure locations in 20 minutes. Maybe it's all just coincidence. Maybe it's all just happenstance. I'm not saying it happened. I don't know what happened. But to me, it was very, very interesting to see how easily the crowd was permitted into the Capitol, how quickly the entire Congress was spirited away and brought into safe, secure locations. Once, if they come out, if Nancy Pelosi comes out and gives speeches on the Capitol steps, then obviously we'll know that isn't the case. Obviously we'll know that there was nothing strange going on. But at present, as of right now, all we know is that they were all taken off by law enforcement and military security. So I think that I think that it will be very interesting to see what happens. And all I'm asking you to do is not make assumptions. I'm not telling you that happened. I'm not convinced that happened. But notice that what you thought was going to happen today didn't happen. What you thought was going to be the end result today didn't happen. And so I would strongly suggest that you stop assuming that the status quo is simply going to play out. I personally am more convinced than ever that we're witnessing the first stages of the double envelopment being played out. And so, one person says, what I thought was going to happen today is what happened. I don't think that anybody, okay, we're banning this guy. Let me just give you some advice for those of you who don't listen to me. Never, ever, ever tell me what to do, because you will never, ever comment here again. we don't know if Bannon did say it would happen in a way that you don't expect. And so we'll just have to wait and see if this is playing out in a way that indicates that President Trump is nothing but talk. But on the other hand, what he did say is that it was going to be wild. I would say that it was wild. I would say that it was very unexpected. And so far, events are playing out in keeping with the way that Donald Trump has predicted. And furthermore, we've actually seen Pence show his true colors. I think that that might be the last thing that he was waiting for. I think it's very intriguing that I think it's very intriguing to see that Trump has been as silent as he's been. I think it's intriguing to see that he didn't apologize. He didn't issue the usual platitudes about and wag his finger and tisk about violence and so forth. And so, once we see how this plays out over the next couple of days, we'll have a much better understanding of what's coming next. Triana Max says, what can Trump do without help in DC? He may not need any more help now. So all that was really necessary for the crowd to do today, he wanted the crowd to be there, right? We know that he wanted the crowd to be there. The crowd showed up, and the crowd prevented the electors from being certified. And now the Congress is missing. Now the Congress is in a safe, secure location. So I think that the correct thing to do is what I always recommend. Wait 2 days and see. What I heard from Trump today was not a man who was backing down, was not a man who was conceding anything. He came right out and said that he won in a landslide. If he was telling the truth, then what happened today was generally planned. And so Trump did say that today is only the beginning. And so, to me, what we saw today was a pretty clear indication that Trump is going to cross the Rubicon. And, it will be interesting to see. It will be intriguing to see. It doesn't mean he's going to do it. Just because he has a plan for it doesn't mean that he will have the courage to actually do it. There are hundreds of examples of generals and commanders whose courage failed them at the critical moment. There's many, many examples of generals who failed and didn't win because they didn't execute their plan. One of the things that I find very frustrating and incredibly annoying is people say, well, because they didn't win, there never was any plan. Well, that's ridiculous. Every football team has a game plan. But only 50% of them win at any given week. Does that prove that nobody had a plan? Of course not. It means the plan didn't work. Mike Tyson said, supposedly Napoleon said, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. Mike Tyson famously said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So there's no question that Donald Trump has a plan, that Donald Trump expects to still be president 3 weeks from now. And what we have seen is that the other side's plan definitely didn't work out today, did it? You know, didn't you see the media heads, almost crying? Couldn't you hear the panic and the fear in their voices? Yeah, they're back on this full spin thing. They're back on trying to massage the narrative to get you to be convinced that those were the worst riots since the Watts riots of the 1960s and everything. It's total nonsense. So I think that if you are waiting for Trump to cross the Rubicon, then you should probably be excited. You should probably be feeling pretty optimistic at this point. Someone said, "Do you still think that Trump is going to be president?" Yes, I do. I don't think that there's. I see very little chance that Biden will ever be sworn in. Everybody said that he was going to be certified by the electors today. Didn't happen, did it? And so, pay attention and, keep your eyes open. But most of all, don't fall for the media narrative. It's always wrong. Always. I've said many times, the only thing that you can be sure isn't true is whatever the media's official story is. So be confident. Be interested. Don't have fear. What we saw today was tremendously interesting. I think it was a strong indication that Donald Trump is going to do whatever he needs to do to make sure that he is not unseated by election fraud. And so we'll see. Remember, just because you have a plan doesn't mean the plan is going to work. And that's true for everybody. It's true for both sides. But remember this image. When you're thinking about what's going on, remember this image. The one thing that is absolutely necessary for a successful double envelopment is for the other side to be absolutely convinced that they are winning. You cannot successfully accomplish a double envelopment if the other side doesn't think they're winning, because they won't enter the trap. Think about how long it took President Trump to get Mike Pence to publicly expose himself. And so I'm not saying that that is absolutely what's going on. I'm not saying that that I have a perfect understanding of what's happening. All I'm saying is that once more, the mainstream narrative was wrong. And if you can't understand that seeing the American Capitol building invaded for the first time since 1814 means that maybe, just maybe, the status quo is not going to stand up, that things are not going to proceed exactly the way they've proceeded for the past 10, 12, 20, 40 years, then I don't know what more you need to see. Rob, go ahead and do the super chats now if you like. Bobbert Collins says, do you think this was something started by Antifa? That seems to be the new narrative now. No, I don't think so. I have no doubt that there were Antifa infiltrators there. I have no doubt that they tried to make things worse, that they tried to make things look worse, but I don't think that, you know, to me, it looked like the whole thing was planned. Trump said something about, I wish you could be up here. You know, then, I mean, the police actually moved the barricades out of the way and opened the doors. So to me, the whole thing looked like it was prearranged. Laughing Man says, gamers rise up. The fire rises, brother. Do you think Trump will declassify anything prior to Rubicon? No, I think declassification will be related to Rubicon. I think it's part and parcel of the same thing. I mean, for me, what was really interesting was seeing the way that the media kept using the term insurrection. It was actually a CNN headline saying, insurrection in Washington. I was thinking, well, gee, sure looks like an invitation to use the Insurrection Act. Supertonic sends $10. Thank you. Then why was the woman shot? Because you can't, just because you have a plan doesn't mean that everything is completely and perfectly scripted. You've got literally tens of thousands of people. You've got people with guns and stuff. Things happen. Horace says, Vox, I first learned about you from Comicsgate and later Big Bear and have been following since. P.S. I was about to send you the Iron Mike quote, but you beat me to it. Much love. Thank you, Horace. Appreciate that. Interesting that you came from Comicsgate. I always thought that was like nothing but people learning to hate me. Comicsgate was interesting. It's like learning, people first being introduced to you by learning to hate you. Okay. Is Cerno a deep state LARP? No. Mike's genuine. Obviously, I don't agree with him on everything, but he does speak his opinion, and sometimes he's more pessimistic than I am. Sometimes he's more optimistic than I am. Let's see here. Taylor Larson says, keep fighting the good fight. Thank you. Carolina Swamp Fox is quite generous. Thank you. Will this be called a military coup? Absolutely, if Trump crosses the Rubicon. Carlos Blanco says, Vox, what do you think the deep state has on Pence, or do you think he's been in on it all along? I think he's been in on it all along. I mean, nobody gets that high in politics without being very, very deeply questionable, in my opinion. No, I'm not going to stay up and watch the counting of the Electoral College if that happens. I'll take a look and see what happens tomorrow. Adam Mead says, appreciate your reflections and commentary. You're welcome. I appreciate your tuning in. Art and Sol says, thank you, Vox. Tough day in England. You've cheered me up. Yes, it's tough on everybody in England with the whole lockdown thing, but the way that I look at it is get some wine, get some chocolate, get some good books. Enjoy the silence. Bear's Vision says, people at the rally said they decided to storm because the police started firing tear gas at the back of the field where people were being calm. Okay. Well, but again, that looks like it was intentional, doesn't it? Big Rig Fix says, thanks for your words. That helps a lot. If Pence is out, who do you predict to be VP? I would say probably Flynn, alternatively Pompeo. Minnow says, may God bless you all. Today has re-energized his base. Yeah, I think it has. Thank you, Vox. I was hearing from some expats today who were saying this is the first time I ever wanted to go back to the U.S. and be in Washington, D.C. General Grudge says, I've followed you since your WorldNet Daily days. I've learned much from you. Thanks. Thank you, General Grudge. What role does the D.C. National Guard play? Well, the D.C. National Guard is a little bit different because I believe that it directly reports to the military chain of command rather than through a governor, because D.C. is not a state. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so, because earlier today it said that local officials had requested the National Guard to be called out, but they didn't go until they were ordered by the president. Fifilapoo President-elect says, I found you when I heard you dissing Jordan B. Peterson. Yeah, that was that came out kind of funny. Steadfast Bear says, if Trump does cross the Rubicon, how will the military respond in your opinion? They will obey the orders of their commander-in-chief. Han Shantz is generous, thank you. Shoreline 887 says, what are your thoughts on the Georgia runoffs being stolen? I think that's going to be dealt with in the same way that the election is being dealt with. The information will come out. PhoenixBlogzewski says, Boxer, very much appreciated. Thanks very much. Sending love from Philadelphia. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Sorry about the recent loss to the Redskins. Terry McLeod says, when is next stupid question day? I have so much to ask. Yeah, we need to do one of those soon. We'll do that. We'll do that soon. David Luscombe wants to know, what's your favorite Depeche Mode track? I would say that my favorite Depeche Mode track is... I really like Enjoy the Silence, but I would say that my favorite track is probably Blasphemous Rumors. Duralex Sedlex says, does it really matter if they certify when this many people know it's a sham? Well, that's what we're possibly going to find out. So, it's even possible that this was all just another warning. But I think that the main purpose was to figure out where Mike Pence stood. Demetrius Bell said, if this was not intentional, I would have expected the police forces to not have looked like 8th Division bench warmers. Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Baron von Metzgenderstein says, what do you make of that video where Secretary of Defense Miller calls Pence a mentor? Does that mean Miller took the ticket too? Or probably. What % chance do you give for Trump to stay in office? I would say 85 to 90%. Things can always fail, but I remember I should probably make it 90% because possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Cape Cod Bear says, any truth the rumor I'm hearing that the Buffalo Hat, any truth the rumor I'm starting that the Buffalo Hat dude is now king? 100%. I absolutely think that would be fantastic. Adam Mead says, have you or will you ever consider doing some amateur book porn of the shelves behind you? You have such beautiful tones. Not really. I mean, it's basically the Franklin Library, some Castalia Library books, and the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. That's pretty much everything you can see there. Obviously, the library is bigger than that, but that's what you can see. Darth Pliskin says, this was a glorious day. It was probably the first time in some 100 years since the Dixie flag was flown in the Capitol. Crushing. Exactly. Internet veteran says, hi, Vox. If Trump doesn't get a second turn, does that automatically mean he cucked? Or could his ultimate plan not work out without him cucking? I wouldn't say automatically. I mean, there's obviously ways that things can fail that don't involve a lack of nerve in pulling the trigger. But in this case, I think that it does tend to involve, it would involve a failure of nerve. I mean, he has every legal right to invoke the Insurrection Act. If he goes away without ever doing that, then I don't see how you can possibly not reach that conclusion. How would I tell the difference? Very easily. Was the Insurrection Act ever invoked? Were any of the people guilty of committing crimes ever arrested? My favorite KMFDM, that's pretty easy. I like Drug Against War. My shield is discussed, said alia jacta est. That's Latin for the die is cast. Trump knows he won't get away with this unless he wins. And like you said, it was planned. His feet are wet and his powder is dry. That's how it looks to me. You know, that's how it looks to me. I may not be right, but we'll see. Pablo Zarate says, have you heard anything about Texit? Yes, I don't buy it. I don't see that happening anytime soon. All right. Well, that's all we've got time for tonight. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate the interest. These are just my opinions. I have no special information. I've seen the same news and coverage and rumors that you have. My analysis is simply based on knowledge of history and a certain amount of pattern recognition. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And if I turn out to be wrong, I'll be happy to admit it. But keep your eyes open, keep your mind open, and do not accept the media narrative without a significant amount of skepticism. Have a good night, and let's look forward to see what happens tomorrow. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.